funeral home. Tonight on the CBS program 48 Hours, you learned about child abuse scandals and how communities are dealing with them. But now you'll learn about a very different kind of child abuse scandal. I've been looking into the case of a local psychologist who claims he's become the victim simply by reporting suspected child abuse. Now you'll learn his story in the special investigative Action News Wants to Know report.
It's been a real nightmare. Both myself and my family have been devastated. I've lost my life savings.
Jim Singer's nightmare began back in 1986 when this Du Bois psychologist reported a case of suspected child abuse, not only because he felt morally and professionally obligated, but also because that's the law.
I would do it again. As a matter of fact, I was told that I would have been prosecuted if I did not, that the state would prosecute me.
Dr. George Fatula is the chairman of pediatrics at the Du Bois Regional Medical Center and is familiar with the case reported by Jim Singer.
Spoke with two doctors who were involved in this case, and they both told me that they would have filed child abuse against the offender if Mr. Singer had not.
Pennsylvania's Child Protective Services Act not only requires professionals like psychologists and doctors to report suspected child abuse, it's supposed to protect their identity once they do. But in Singer's case, that trust apparently was broken, possibly by somebody within the local Children and Youth Services Agency.
There was testimony received that the caseworker not only released my name and the name of the alleged victim, but apparently solicited complaints.
Just months after filing the child abuse report, Singer found himself the target of accusations, some involving the child abuse case, others involving claims of unrelated ethics violations. The charges now are being investigated by the state. Clearfield County State Representative Dan Sura thinks it was more than coincidence.
Seems to have occurred is that as a mandated reporter of child abuse, he was somehow, the family found out that he reported abuse, and I don't know for sure how that happened. And I believe that what happened then, there was an organized conspiracy to go after Jim Singer professionally.
There are claims that Children and Youth Services personnel even took part in the alleged conspiracy, in one case resorting to blackmail. This woman, whose identity is being protected, had a contact with the agency because of a daughter who was under professional care. And then one day, she says agency workers showed up at her home asking questions about Jim Singer.
They kept pressuring me to say something against him, and I kept telling him I didn't know him. They then proceeded to tell me that Dr. Singer had reported child abuse. Before they left my home that day, I knew that Dr. Jim Singer had reported the child abuse. I knew who the perpetrator was, and I knew who the victim was. I was threatened if I didn't cooperate with the agency that I had another child, and they would take her away from me.
That threat never materialized. This woman, a former client of Singer, has a similar story.
They were trying to get us just to go against Mr. Singer, figuring that since we had been a client that we would agree with everybody else and go against them with charges that was put on them. And we just didn't feel that any of it was true.
We wanted to ask the people here at Children and Youth Services in Clearfield County about the accusations, about the claims of violating professional trust, intimidation, harassment, but it seems that none of the people reportedly involved back then are still here now. And besides, there are larger questions, the answers to which can only be found in Harrisburg. Our search took us not to the Capitol, but across the street to the Department of State, which investigates accusations against professionals like Jim Singer. And while a case like his may seem to be as simple as a professional following state law, State Department Chief Counsel Pamela Raison says it's their job to make sure the psychologists, doctors, and social workers follow the letter of the law.
In order to be a mandated reporter, you must have come in contact with the person that you're reporting the case against within the context of your profession. If you do not follow the letter of that law, then conceivably you may not come within that definition and therefore may not be afforded the protections of the Act.
In addition, Raison says the State Licensing Board of Psychology is examining issues independent of the child abuse case in question, including allegations against Singer of improper billing procedures. But Clearfield County lawmaker Dan Sura feels justice is not being served.
I think somewhere along the line somebody made a bad call. I believe, personally, that a bunch of unfounded complaints started this whole process in gear, and the bureaucratic mess took over, and he got snowballed in with it.
there really seems to be a malicious vendetta because it's just gone too far. And maybe the government has to save face, and rather than that, they're just trying to bury me.
The State Licensing Board of Psychology is ready to wrap up the case of Jim Singer that began back in 1987. The board is expected to release its final findings in his case within approximately 60 days. At that time, Singer could be cleared of the various charges, or if the board finds against him, he could lose his license, be fined, or both. Singer's attorney also is filing a federal injunction to freeze the current proceedings before the Psychology Board. We'll have more on this story as it develops. Sports is next on